We'll start right at the beginning. ATC, what does that stand for? Activating events, thoughts, and consequences. So we'll get into what each one of those are in more detail in just a little bit, but this skill helps to build self-awareness. And we're going to look at our heat of the moment thoughts about an activating event and the consequences that those thoughts have so that we can get greater control over both of our emotions and our reactions to those situations. So this is kind of how the model works. It's based on some really interesting research and work by Albert Ellis. And so here's the first part is the activating event, a trigger, a challenge, an adversity, or a positive event. So anything can be an activating event. Something like getting in a car accident or winning the lottery could both be activating events. So I usually say when I have a full class full of kids, I say, is dropping your pencil on the floor an activating event? And the kids all say, no. I said, could it be an activating event? And they're like, no. I said, what if like this happened and you missed breakfast and you got yelled at by a teacher and then you got tripped in the hall and you were just about to start a test and you dropped your pencil. Then would it be an activating event? And they're like, maybe. So activating events aren't just about the event. They're also about the person. So an activating event, like I'm 45 years old. If I got pregnant, that would be an activating event. It would not be a good activating event. I'd be like, oh no, I don't want to have another baby. My youngest one is 12. I have two little sisters who are both trying to get pregnant. They're much younger than I am, and they only have two little girls. So for them, that would be a different kind of activating event. So same event, but different perception. And then also, it depends on the situation. So something that wouldn't be an activating event for me on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday could be an activating event just because of everything else going on. Things might be piling up in my life. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Cool. And then we have thoughts about whatever the activating event was. So say I'm walking down the hall and I trip and I drop my books. My thought might be, that kid right next to me tripped me. He did it on purpose. Or my thought might be, oh, I'm so clumsy. I can't believe I tripped on my own shoelaces. Or my thought might be, I bet that looked awesome. My book just went everywhere. That's hilarious. I hope somebody got that on video. So we could have different thoughts about the same event. And our thoughts about the event are what we say to ourselves right when it happens, like not later, but right when it happens, before we process what happened, just the things that come immediately to our mind. And then we have our emotions and our reactions, and those are actually driven by our thoughts. And I think that's really important to note because I think a lot of people think that an activating event makes them do something. Like as a parent or as a teacher, how many times have we heard somebody say, I did this because my little brother or my little sister took my pencil or took my book or wore my shirt without permission. They'll say that they did something because of the event. And I think even adults, oftentimes you'll hear say, well, I did this because this happened. And they don't make that connection that their thoughts are kind of in between the event and their reactions. A lot of people still think that an event makes them do something that happens and there's nothing in between and we don't have a lot of control over it. So I think having that, slowing this down and examining our thoughts and how they lead to the emotions and our emotions lead to reactions helps people get better control over things in the future. Because as we do this over and over again, we're going to start to see patterns, and that's going to help us get even more control. So this is just a little example about how our thoughts drive those consequences. If we have a fight with someone we care about, the thought might be, that person never listens to what I have to say. And the emotion might be frustration, irritation, or anger. What are some reactions that you think somebody might have if they're frustrated, irritated, or angry?
Well, you could just blow up at somebody.
Yeah. And then it kind of goes into a cycle where it goes back and right back into that, creates another activating event. If you blow up at somebody, that's an activating event for them. Then they have thoughts and all things like that. But one of the really important things to do is to label the emotions that we're having with all of these things. So we see that model, we need, if we're going to examine our thoughts and our emotions and our consequences, we need a lot of good words for emotions. And when we have a live class, this is the time where I divide them up into teams and I give them 3 minutes to list all of the emotions that they can list. So if they're watching this in groups, they can pause the video here and take 3 minutes and list all the emotions they can think of. Otherwise, I'll post a list of emotions along with this video that they can look at. And we always get really good lists. Sometimes we get lists of 40, 50, 60 different emotions that kids can list off in just 3 minutes, which is really amazing that they can come and get that many emotions. So they've got a lot of words for different emotions, and we're always coining new ones. Like I remember the first time that somebody put hangry on the list, I'm like, oh, that's when I need my emotional vocabulary. So we need all these we need all of these emotion names so that we can really identify how we're feeling. So that's basically what they do. They list the emotions, and then they look at one of the things that a lot of times kids will notice then after they have made their list is that there are a lot of different words for the same emotion. We have different degrees, like we have happy, glad, elated, ecstatic. And also we have a lot of words. A lot of times kids come up with much richer vocabulary lists for negative emotions. So sometimes we've had almost a 2-to-1 ratio of negative emotions to positive emotions, just because they might evoke more of a memory, so they come up with them a little quicker. And it could be part of that negativity bias we talked about in Hunt the Good Stuff, which hopefully we'll make a video for that sometime soon and post online. But I know your kids have already had that module, so they might remember that about the negativity bias. So hopefully they.
Well, and I've always thought that it's the negative emotions that we tend to remember more because they build our character, I think.
Yeah.
I've always said, everyone has fun going out to the movies with their friends, but no one ever comes back from it a changed person, right?
Yeah.
It was a fun time, and then they're on to the next fun time. But it's the hard stuff in life that kind of builds who we are.
Yeah. Absolutely. So again, we'll go over the positive emotions benefits that we talked about when we were doing Hunt the Good Stuff. That positive emotions increase our creative thinking. They help undo some of the physical effects of negative emotion. They're contagious. They help us build resilience. But we're not using this skill so that we never have to feel negative emotion. It's so that we can understand that negative emotion. Like you said, it leaves us changed. But how can we change in an appropriate, healthy, productive way? And how can we change so that we don't have to feel negative emotions without reason? If we're doing something that isn't working and isn't productive, this will help us identify that so that we don't have to keep doing the same thing over and over again. We can make better choices and try something new if what we're doing isn't working for us. So here's how the skill works. I just put in a sample activating event. So my parents took away my phone because I had 3 overdue assignments. This is something that actually happened to one of my kids. So it was easy for me to come up with this. We went through this process, and this is kind of what they came up with. So usually when I'm with a class, I ask them, so what's a thought you might have? And one of the ones I get a lot of times is, that's not fair. And then their emotion is anger, and their reaction is stomping around or talking back. And then we go down, okay, is that emotion and reaction helping or harming? And they're like, sometimes first they say, oh, it's helping. It makes me feel better. And then they say, well, then what happens? And then what happens? And they go, oh, well, then I get in more trouble and I didn't get the assignment done and I'm still not getting my phone back. So is it helping you? Not really. Some other, that's my dog. Apparently he's having some emotions about something too right now. I don't know if you could hear him growling. Another thought that sometimes people say is, oh man, I should have done my assignments earlier. And then their emotion is frustration with themselves and their reaction is feeling really sad. And it says, is that helping or harming? And they're like, well, it's not really doing either. It's not helping, but it's not harming either. And then so we do this after something has already happened. And then we go back and we examine the thought and say, well, what's a different thought I could have that might be more productive in this situation? And then we finally come up with that thought might be something like, my parents really want me to get these assignments done so that I can do well in school. I've got a consequence, so I better get this done. And their emotion is gratitude that their parents care enough, and also a little bit of motivation to get it done. And then their reaction is sitting down and doing the homework, getting things done.
Call from.
And then they say, would that emotion and reaction be helping or harming? And then they're like, well, that's helping because that's getting me to do what I need to do. And it gets my phone back as early as possible. It gets my assignments done. My parents will be proud of me. All that good stuff will follow, instead of getting grounded for talking back or feeling bad because I didn't do what I should have done in the first place and just kind of wallowing in pity a little bit. So that's just a little example. And then as you go through this over and over again with different situations, you might start to notice that there's a pattern in the thoughts that we have. So maybe I have a lot of thoughts about this is unfair, people are out to get me, people are trying to make things hard. Or maybe I have a lot of thoughts that fall into a pattern of I'm so stupid, or I can't believe I did that, or I should have done it this way, or I should have done something different, or I shouldn't do this, or very harsh on themselves. So we're going to start to notice those patterns in the way that we react and the way that we handle certain events. And it's kind of, we're going to look at the glasses pictures there. We're going to look at what lens might we be looking at the world through, and maybe examine that. And there's some skills that we'll go on to later that can help us examine what lenses we're looking through and why, and do we want to keep them or change them or just be aware of it. So then practical exercise, if the people watching the video want to think of a recent, vivid, activating event that they had, go through that process. What was the first thought that they had? What was the second thought that they had? What was the third thought they had? Just write those thoughts down really fast. And then think, what was your emotion? What was your reaction? And then get to the bottom and say, was this helping? Was this not helping? And why? And then think about what's a different thought, a different way to think about the situation in the future. If I encounter the same situation in the future, what's a different way I could think about that might be better for me in the long run. So if they want to go back to that screen, just go back up here and go through that process. They can just write it down on a piece of paper, divide it in half, write their thought, emotions, and reactions. Thought, emotions, and reactions. Or there's another one too. I forgot it. I had another one right there. And then it's really important to answer that question at the bottom. Are your emotions and reactions helping or harming you or others as well? And then we want to separate, think about some key principles from this. You want to separate the activating event from the thoughts and the consequences. It's really important that the activating event we write down, it's just the facts, the who, the what, the when, and the where. Not because my sister's so stupid or something like that. We just want to write down very objectively what happened. And then the heat of the moment thought is just the first thought that comes into our head when that thing happened. And then we're looking for patterns over a long period of time as we're going through this process over and over again. Start to think about, what are those patterns that I have? They might be undercutting my performance or my mental toughness. And self-awareness is the primary target of this skill. And then after they've gone through and looked at their patterns, they should think about what they learned um, over time doing this. Do you start to notice any thought patterns or um, patterns of emotional responses? And then look at what ways reactions are helping or harming. And look at the good things too, because sometimes we have patterns in the way that we respond to positive activating events as well. So it's good to have that, not just pull out a skill and use it when something isn't going our way, but pull out the skill and notice what is happening when things are going right, because that can give us a lot of valuable information also. And then some questions that they can think about. So I usually ask how they think that this skill, activating events, thoughts, and consequences, can help them to do better at school, sports, and other activities. Some of the answers I usually get from young people are that they won't keep doing negative things that aren't getting them what they want over and over again. What are some ways that you think that, after hearing that you think it might be helpful? Any ideas?
This is wonderful information.
Thanks. Yeah, some other things that they say for how it could be helpful is that it can help them really get to the root of why they're thinking the things that they're thinking, why they're having those thoughts over and over again in the same patterns. It can help them uh, get better at practicing things that they're having trouble practicing. It can help prevent procrastination. They've come up with a lot of really amazing answers to that question. And then improving relationships with family and friends also. People say, yeah, a lot of times we have the same fights over and over again. They're not the exact same fight, but we fight about the same things. And if we can kind of get to the root of why this is bothering me so much, maybe I won't keep having the same fight over and over again with my friend or with my parents. And so that's a really good way to use the skill.